please help me welcome James Byrne. Yes.
Thank you. Well, I am so excited to be here and to be able to talk about my work. I feel a lot of joy in the room because it's warm and we're coming out of a pandemic, and so I just want to try to give some of that joy back to you.
James.
Yes. I'm ready.
I think I'll remember your name. Your exhibition's entitled, do those pieces have a unifying theme? Visually unified, but I wonder if they're content.
No. They are new. Well, it's called new works, of course. And they've all been made in the last maybe 6 months. And I started this process of these kinds of mixed media, digital prints and collages 2 years ago. But to really understand where I am today, you have to know a little bit about my background, and maybe you were going to ask, but I'll just give you a brief summary. Because I started out in video art, and I have a degree from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in video art. I made installations and tapes, live performances, and then that evolved after about a decade or so into dance video collaborations. And I worked with some of the very top, living in New York at the time, very top choreographers, including Eiko Taka of Eiko and Coma, and Trisha Brown, and Laurie Anderson. She's not a choreographer, but I did work with her for stage performances. And then I got interested in theater and narrative film, so then and screenwriting. So then for a decade or so, I wrote and directed short films, narrative films with actors and a story and dialogue and all that stuff. And then that evolved into what I'm doing here. But the connecting thread is what I feel is the primacy of the image. In all the work, the video art, dance video, the short films, the most important thing was the image. The other connecting thing was use of a camera and my comfort level with working with technology. That's where I really feel comfortable. Digital art, digital camera work, but I was always using a camera. And I continue to use a camera in this work. And besides a camera, I use an iPad and a computer. So I evolved from film to these works about 2 years ago. And this is what I've been doing for the last 2 years, and this is my most recent work that's up on display. A portion of it. There's many more. And if there's a connecting thread, content-wise, no. But if you see a connecting thread, that's fine. Because a lot of the work I'm able to leave up to the viewer's interpretation and discovery. Because there's a lot of things I put in there that people never see, and then there's so many things in there that people see that I didn't know was there. So it's a wonderful kind of discovery and sharing process that I try to use.
They kind of hover or flutter for me between nearly being non-objective and having abstract but recognizable imagery. Is there an intention there, or is there an expectation that the viewer recognizes some of the imagery?
Yes, it hovers, as you said. I think you said hover, you said quiver.
Hover and flutter.
Hover,
I think it flutters.
Hover and quiver and it vibrates. Yeah. I like the word vibrate. Yes, there are recognizable images if you've seen the show. And please, if you haven't, run up there during intermission or after and take a look. I have some pictures here I'll show you of it. But there are recognizable images, basically sort of from the photography part of the construction of these collages. Then there are things that I draw on there. that aren't recognizable, that are abstract, and then some of the photographs that are just plain photographs become abstract through the process. And what I like to do is mix all that together, so when viewing, there's a certain ground of understanding and perception of, oh, I recognize that. That's in reality, that's a street, or that's a sidewalk, or that's a person. But then it's surrounded by all these other things that interact with it. So yes, I love to mix abstraction and semi-abstraction all together. And then, does it become a whole? Maybe, maybe not.
The works have a very juicy paint quality. There's that very, for me, it's an itchy tension between the visual texture and our expectation for what paint can do and the flatness of the digital prints. Is that a drive of yours to play with the expectation of the surface tension, the surface quality?
Surface tension is definitely important. People want to touch my prints all the time. There's an illusion of texture, but it's really flat. But that illusion of texture is very important. I want the work to feel more handmade than machine-made. And I have a process that I've discovered over these 2 years of getting to that point where it appears painterly, but I'm not trying to fool anyone. These are mixed media, digital prints and collages. I haven't seen anything like it. I have an arts background, not an illustrator's background or a technician's background. I'm very low tech, and I use these low-grade, unknown apps that no one else uses. So I try to make that very colorful. I love color, and I love the way it interacts, and I love texture. And luckily I found a way that mixes all that together to hopefully engage the viewer. It's about engagement and kind of showing my thought process, or my inner soul, my inner feelings, the emotional part. And then again, I make something, and then I turn it over to the viewer. And there are certain things built in, but there's so much surprise and discovery in there for the viewer that I'm happy to share.
Have you ever been a traditional painter? Have you
No.
ever worked in that medium? Never?
No. I've never put a paintbrush to a canvas. I'm just not trained for that at all. I'll show you later, but photography really was the first medium I worked in. And again, that primacy of the image. So I've studied painters, I've studied sculptors, all other artists. I'm very interested in all other art forms. And the only thing that's going on with hand to canvas, if you might say, is that on my iPad, when I make all these things, I'm using my fingertips on the glass of the iPad like finger painting. So I don't use a stylus. What I really like about the fingertip is that it's so inaccurate. And it's so out of control. And I do that, and oh, what's that? And it surprises me. And I continue to work. So it's very low tech, but if there was anything that was a hand on a surface, paintbrush on a canvas, it's my fingertips on the glass of an iPad. And that creates everything that I do. Yeah, so. And I just saw a story about what she's billed as, I didn't get the name, but I saw it in one of my news feeds, the world's only working finger painter. Oh, she does dogs. Dogs, where am I thinking of? Anybody see that? Yeah. She's in a show, yeah, a dog splattering, and it's the gallery out in Wayzata. Someone help me. No, Wayzata. It's Burnett.
Burnett, yeah.
Burnett. So that's where I read it. It wasn't a news feed, it was their website. Anyway, so she does finger painting on canvas. I do finger painting on an iPad.
As you're developing this process, which is unusual and unique, it seems like a lonely and maybe intimidating place to be, but quite possibly not. Did you have any model artist that you looked up to for developing their own medium approach?
Well, yes, but also let me answer that lonely thing. Oh, lonely. I'm very comfortable with solitude. I think any artist has to be comfortable with solitude. And yeah, there is kind of loneliness sometimes, because sometimes during some parts of my career, I really did have to stay away and be alone. But I'm married to a very wonderful woman, Carol, right here. So I was never really alone. But I shut myself up in rooms or studios and work. And your second question about the people who have, artists who have influenced me, I guess, to show me as a role model of how to be an artist, started with Peter Campus, who was also a video artist. And then when I worked with Trisha Brown and Laurie Anderson, they, just by example, I could see how dedicated they were and how professional they were and how committed they were to their work. So I tried to be in that vein of prepared and committed and serious about the work that I do.
Were you ever uncomfortable or uncertain about the direction you were going? Did you ever question, is this the right thing? Is this a thing?
No. I've been lucky that way. I've never had a block. I've had some fallow periods, fallow periods, but I've never had a block or thought, oh, this is, I just keep working. And I think that comes from examples that I just mentioned before of other artists and many other artists that I met in New York who, it's their life and they just keep doing it. And I feel fortunate that I have never really doubted it. However, almost every time I finish a film, I said, this is the last film I remember making. That's the only art form that I always thought that the next one would be my last one. It never was, until it was. But with this new work, no, what I loved about it, and maybe why I have switched or evolved, transformed into other mediums, is because I like the discovery process, learning something new, challenging myself to do something different. I think maybe when I switched from video art to dance video to film to this, I felt like, after a decade or so, 12 years, that I had really exhausted what I really wanted to do, and I needed something more to challenge me. And so I just very naturally and organically, it was not conscious, it wasn't intellectual, I didn't decide, okay, I'm done with film, I'm doing this. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna look into something else. The first year of doing this kind of work, I did nothing. It was scribbles, it was, experimental. Maybe the first year and a half, I didn't really make what I call gallery-worthy or public viewing-worthy work until the last 6 months. So it's a new chapter in my career, and I have so much to learn and to discover in this whole process that I have left to do that it'll keep me busy for a while. So happy about that.
A lot of our audience are practicing artists themselves, and I'm sure they're wondering, at what point did you recognize that the work that you were making, this new work, was worthy of being seen by other people?
About 6 months ago. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but like,
the quality
how did
okay,
you
well,
identify? How did you identify that it was ready?
I just knew. There was just work that wasn't quite there yet, and I just knew from looking at it that it was lacking something. It wasn't horrible work. I have a big file, several files on my computer where I keep this stuff because it's a JPEG that finally gets printed. And I have a file in all my different series, and the file is called Maybe Not. And I drag in all the JPEGs that, I think are meh, it's not quite up to standards. And then I never really look at that file, and I often wonder, do those images sit in there and say, how did we get in here? What was the deal with James? He just put us in here. Well, we're not worthy to show. They don't really talk to each other. And then you get to a certain point where it's through comparison and just you take a risk, and you feel like, okay, this is ready to show. And so I show it.
And it was entirely arrived at through your response and your analysis and mulling it over. Did you share the work with anyone as you were generating it? Do you bounce it off people? Do you critique with any other artists?
No, I don't really critique. I don't really share. Although, two really good artist friends of mine, one is here tonight, Tim Harding, who is a well-known fiber artist, and Patty Paulus, who is another artist. We meet occasionally and look at work and talk to each other. So I guess if that's critiquing, yes.
And with this new process, I feel like a lot of artists would be quite protective of it, maybe even secretive. But I know that you're willing to share that process.
The slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, at first I didn't want to tell anyone what I was using or how I was doing it. But then I realized it's so damn complicated that I used to teach, I taught filmmaking and screenwriting at Metropolitan State University. So I'm all geared up to show people how to do stuff. And then it's so complicated, I couldn't teach anyone how to do it. I mean, I could write it down. I've written it down, and then I look at it and say, what is this? I try to explain it to Carol. She, her eyes glaze over, and she listens patiently. So now it's like, hey, it's like I could tell you the program, the files and stuff. But what I have here tonight, I think what you're referring to, in the process of doing this, I can save and record every step, almost every step along the way. I don't normally do this, but for tonight, I thought I would do it for demonstration purpose, make a piece and record every step along the way, and then show it and maybe talk about it a little bit as I did it, to at least so you can see a process and maybe find out how I work, what I think about. This is a big experiment because I never save or record the steps along the way, because that would be 20 or 30 or 40 different slides for every piece. And my process is very intuitive and non-intellectual. In fact, the less I think, the better. As soon as I start to think, oh, I'm going to make this piece and it's going to look like this and I want to do it, it dies. I just have never worked that way. So I'll show about 20 slides of the steps along the way, and I'll make comments as if I were making it at the time. I don't know how it's going to work, but we'll give it a shot. But at least you can see, and maybe you've seen the work, and then I have some slides of finished work after that. So there it is. This is the proverbial blank canvas. It is the white screen on my iPad that I start with every time. And I look at it and I just, no thoughts, James, no thoughts. Don't try to do anything. Although I will say that each piece builds on the next one. So whatever I've done previously, I either say to myself, all right, I'm going to do the complete opposite. Or I say, I'm going to keep going in this vein and develop it further. And that's it for the thought process. Then after that, literally it is just genuinely, randomly, although nothing's really random, picking things out. So because this is a rectangle, and I end up with squares, I put this graph on there so I can keep track of things, make it square, and make sure there's not things too high or too low that I worked on for a long time and then realized it won't fit in because it was too high or too low. So I put these little guidelines in. Then I import photographs. And I can literally go through the iPad. I make this motion with my hand because I can spin the photos, and then if I touch it, it'll stop. And then whatever's there, I'll choose. And then I'll spin it again, I'll choose another one. Spin it again, choose another one. And then I end up with 6 or 7. And you can see they're very ordinary photographs, nothing special about these. But there's a connection. There's a blue, warm colors and cool colors. And there's always I'm working with a lot with architecture in place, so we can see there's a space there, that's architectural. Those are Carol's feet right there. That's just sitting on the porch. That's just like pull out a camera and click, click, click. It's the raw material. If I find that I'm making really formally composed photographs, they don't work. So I choose 6 or 7, pop them up there, and I know immediately which ones I want to work with. It's immediate. And so I get rid of the ones I don't want to work with. Then I range these photographs, change sizes, I can repeat them, and it's all with my fingertips, squeezing out or bringing in or just hitting duplicate. So there it is. Now you can see there's a big picture, in the back of the feet and the porch, and then I've resized some of the others. And then now I've repeated some of these, the photographs there of that happens to be me in the mirror. And that was kind of I did have to pose a little bit and say, oh, there's a mirror. And so I took a picture, and the light was really nice, so I just took a few there. And sometimes I choose a big photograph for the background, which I have here. And now I reach size and change it around. I'm looking for composition. I'm looking for, do these pictures talk to each other? Is there drama anywhere? Is there content? Is there a narrative? It reveals itself as I continue to work. And now so now I can draw on it, and you can see it's just very elementary. Usually I just draw what's there. You can see those blue lines in the actual photograph, so I just take blue and accentuate them. And I can go further with accentuation, again with these black lines right around the door, and then I add a frame and highlight the figures. Oh, and then I've added my little person here. I don't have a name for this, but when it's standing up, it's alive. If it's lying down in a box, it's a sarcophagus. And when there's an eye there, I have repeated forms of worms, creatures, doorways, passages, fish. So I keep going. Now, this is the first time that it is processed. So now what happens when it gets processed? Now, these figures are becoming something else. And what happens to, as I talk to myself during the making of, but I don't verbalize any of this when I'm working. So then you can see things start to transform. Oops. Okay. Okay, then I add, so I go back to my iPad. And now I've changed the color. Here, it's red, and so I have to add if I use one color somewhere, I should use it someplace else. So I put a red swirl up there, and then I said, okay, we'll have things coming out of the soda can that my friend is holding. So these things popping out. Okay. Then back to being processed. Things change again. Then back to the iPad. Now I've added those up here. There are in the middle there. I thought I needed something there instead of the repetition of myself in the mirror. Those are porcelain ceramic bowls. And then I highlighted them within their color. And then I processed it. And now they become like maybe paint cans when you're looking from the top. And now it's just all too cluttered. It's just way too much. So I go back. And what I did here is remove 7 photographs. It has to breathe. So now we only have, But in addition to that, I added so much stuff. E equals fish. I thought that was hilarious. I don't know why I wrote it, but I was interested recently in mathematical formulas in my work. And then I added these 3 little figures down here. I'm not going to use the pointer anymore. Are they the Three Stooges? Are they Daryl, his brother Larry, and his other brother Daryl? Are they the Holy Trinity? Anyway, there's 3 of them. They're kind of like monster figures. And now I've put in these crosses or crucifixes. There's now 5 of them there. And up at the top, you can see now that those feet are revealed again because I took a photograph away. And there they are. And now something is happening. Now it seems to be a little cinematic. And the recent work I'm doing is more cinematic than what you see upstairs. Cinematic in the sense that these things interact with each other. And there's a figure back here. And I took the frame off that middle figure that's outlined in red because I wanted that figure to be in the background. When it was framed, it seemed to be in the foreground. And I guess I will use this. I wanted this light. I wanted this light on the door to appear to be coming through this window. However, it's just the opposite in real life. And I wanted that figure to be in the background. And there's my 3 figures, and the crosses, the crucifixes. A lot of my work has multiple meanings, dual, triple. Everything has a flip side. So they could be just crosses. It could be a crucifix. And then, then I outlined these feet. And, it reminded me of is the Wicked Witch of the North when she was crushed under the house. I loved her character. She was so intense and so dedicated to what she was doing. So now all of a sudden I have these feet floating in from the side, and I'm going to be looking in the future for other feet. This is how one piece feeds another for my work. And then I added this figure here. And then these are things that I just draw on that will become transformed in the next slide when I go back to progressing from the iPad to the computer. And now you can see how things have changed. You can't see this figure right here, but if you look closely, you can't really see it. But now it's not a recognizable human being. It's a sad little dog. And this is what happens in this process. Things change from the photograph to the transformation here. And this is the most exciting thing that I discovered during this step. And if you look really closely, it's just such a sad-looking kind of dog creature. You can't see it. I don't think you can see it here. A little bit. I guess, yes, it's using an app called Glaze, and yes, it's applying a filter. Yeah, so I apply a filter, the same filter every time. Jumping back and forth between an iPad and the computer because the iPad doesn't do this and the computer does one thing and goes back and forth. So now I'm happy with the composition. I feel like something's going on. There's some drama, some narrative. And then I have to make it square. So I make it square, and then it changes a little bit too. you can see the difference between a rectangle. Well, everyone knows the difference between a square and a rectangle, but something happens when things are condensed. Also, edges are real important to me. Every square inch is as important as every other square inch. That's something I learned a long time ago in photography. So if the eye moves around from corner to corner, up and down the edge, from figure to figure, engaged in the gallery, that's what I'm hoping for. And these have to be big. These are like 40 by 40, so that you have a chance to see this detail and to notice that sad dog in the middle there, and to wonder what E equals fish really means. I don't know what it means, but I liked it. And then, for those of you maybe not familiar with, and these are pieces in the show, Field of Fire, and you can see the repetition of the little figures. Heritage, and it could be, the implied title might be My Heritage. Minnesota, and there's another plus, that's a plus sign, I guess now. Fish plus figure, or whatever you want to make it. Running late. Tarragona. Thinking of things in the past. Township. The other thing I like to draw are these little houses, but as you can see, that's it from my architectural sketching ability. But I like the fact that it's raw and messy and it's not trained. I'm not a trained draftsman or a trained painter, so it has a different quality. And then two-step. Thank you.